In January 1957, Bishop Perkins called me into his office and said, "Jay, I'd like to turn your name into the stake presidency for advancement in the priesthood at our next conference. That's 3 months away. Can you be ready?" And I said, "I'll try." In March 1957, that was almost 3 months later, I received a phone call from Kenneth Brown, my brother-in-law, saying that Dad and Mom, Dee and Bill had just crashed in Dee's plane on the way to Idaho from Bountiful. Dad had been home from his mission 8 months. They had sold the dress shop in Boise and the farm out of Meridian and moved to Bountiful at the end of his mission, and they were going to Boise to settle the taxes. They hit a freak storm as they were starting over the mountain. It iced them up and forced them to crash 100 feet shy of the ridge. Mom died 3 days later, and we buried her on Saturday, April 6th, 1957. Dad lived another seven years and died of complications caused by the crash. Dee and Bill are yet living. We buried Mom in Bountiful. Afterward, I returned home feeling very low, that I had let Mom down and had not conquered myself. I had everything in control except smoking, and it had been only 2 weeks since I had one. I was working on the Ben-Hur picture at the time at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. I had 5 liquor stores to pass on the way home. I made it home, but that evening, at 8 o'clock at night, I weakened. I went across the alley from the rear gate of my yard and into the back end of the 6th liquor store that I had coaxing me. I bought a pack of cigarettes. And went back into the yard and stood beside the incinerator. The evening was light. I opened the pack and lit the cigarette with my lighter. And as quick as I took a puff, I heard someone crying. I looked around the yard and I couldn't see a soul. And I looked again. There was no one. I took another puff. And I heard the crying more intense. And it continued. And there was something about it that I recognized. So I looked all over again. I could not see anyone. Then my eyes were drawn up in the air between the incinerator and the back end of the garage. And there I saw Mom looking down at me, weeping bitterly. She was wearing a navy blue dress that I'd seen her in, with small white florals on it. And I watched her staring at me and weeping bitterly until I couldn't stand it any longer. I took my cigarettes and my cigarette lighter, threw them in the incinerator. I ran to the house as fast as I could go. Flo and the kids were over at their grandmother's, Esther's, having some evening ice cream. She had a cafe of her own, about a mile and a half from there. I was alone. I quickly got ready for bed. I buried my face and my head in the pillow, and I cried to the Lord, told him how much I hated myself for continually weakening, for letting Mom down, destroying my record of efforts, and not getting in control of myself. not being a good father, good example. And I said to him, Heavenly Father, if you will just take away this terrible nagging and craving from me, I promise you, I'll quit everything that I know to be wrong. And I ended my prayer. I was exhausted, and I soon fell asleep. The next Sunday, my bishop called me to his home, and he apologized. He says, Jay, I'm so sorry I didn't turn in your name. And I cried. I said, Bishop, you knew what you were doing. You knew I wasn't ready. He said, let's try again. He said, I want you to go to the temple and take those 4 lovely sons of yours and have them sealed to you. And he says, I want to go with you. He says, let's try again. After my last temptation, the studios got slow. And we were yet working on the Ben-Hur picture. This was 2 weeks later, on this occasion. They gave me the assignment to fit that big scroll bow piece, the decorative bow piece, on the front end of that big white ship, that slave ship that the master of the 14 slave galleons had, the one that took Charlton Heston, released him as a slave, unchained him, and took him as his personal slave. Do you remember seeing in the picture? Took him. I was fitting that big scroll bow piece on the front end of his ship. Now, there were 14 galleons in all. They were miniatures. But that particular one was 35 feet long. Small miniature. And I was ferrying that thing into the side rails. By the way, those galleons were taken out to a man-made lake that we had with a massive screen, sky screen that we had stretched all around the backside. It went 40 feet, at least 40 feet, maybe better, maybe 60 feet up in the air and wrapped clear around. It was a huge lake. And those 14 galleons were put on there with wind machines back on the side that would chop the water and make waves, make it appear like the ocean, look just like the ocean. And these galleons, some of them, were self-motorized. We had them to where the oars of the slaves were all in unison, and they would propel themselves, and they would guide them, some of them, that one in particular, electronically, to crash into the others. When you remember that there was some crashing into others. I stood back from my work, and this was about 2:30 in the afternoon. We quit at 3. Started at 7 in the morning. I was looking at my work, admiring it, because I felt that I was doing a good job, and I was enjoying what I was doing. And I instinctively reached for a pack of cigarettes. They weren't there. And my thought processes went to work and says, that's right, you've quit. And then it seemed that mental control was taken from me, and all I could do was listen. And a message came into my mind, said, go ahead, Jay, you've done real well. You deserve one. And my attention was drawn over to the boss's office out in front, the cigarette machine, where I'd gone so many times, weakened, put in a quarter, bought a pack of cigarettes, smoked one part of it, and threw the rest of them away, destroying them. I'd been carrying around boxes and boxes of Luden cough drops. And I'd crunch them to saturate my mouth with a flavor so that I'd get my mind off of the nicotine craving. But I knew that I had been spoken to, and it scared me. I flew back to my work, and I worked hard right up till the time that the whistle blew. We usually quit 5 minutes early to gather up our tools and then wait at the clock a little bit for time to strike it and punch our cards out. I went home that evening, and Flo was extra attentive. She greeted me at the door. But I was quiet. During dinner, she says, I noticed you haven't been smoking. I said, no. She said, when did you quit? I said, 2 weeks ago. I said, and I've noticed you haven't been drinking tea either. When did you quit? She said, 2 weeks ago. That was 2 weeks after that prayer. So I know Heavenly Father answers prayers.